ArTechnik Podcast, number 1 for March 25th, 2012. You can hear now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're good. I think we have enough microphones going. Are you wearing your headphones? You are. Okay. Welcome to ArTechnik Podcast number 1. It looks like ArTechnik, but it's not because it's got an accent aigu. So it's technique.
That's why I like that title.
Did I show you our thing?
The Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. I pulled a
Wonder.
Rubik's Cube image off of Google, and I recomposed it to look kind of Tetris-y, and I added a stained glass and a crackle thing. I don't know. I got Photoshop happy. I don't know. It's a thing. Maybe we'll change it. Maybe no one will know what the hell I'm referencing because we'll have a completely different piece of art. But it looks interesting when it's like a tiny square.
This is like the pilot anyway. Many
Yeah.
of us will be recast before we get picked up.
Yep. I wish I could get picked up. Well, this is a soft opening.
The actual opening? I thought this was still sort of...
Oh, just testing.
Oh,
Just
right.
testing.
No, let's just do it now. I think hey, y'all, we're podcasting now.
Oh, surprise.
Surprise. Speaking of, trying to get the thing working. Okay. I think folks should know that we're trying the new, as of this week, GarageBand jam session thing, which was a task unto itself. But we're recording. We have far more audio gear than we possibly need. But we're recording. Adam and I. I'm Jeff, by the way. In the room also would be.
I'm Adam.
And.
Hey, I'm Aaron.
Okay, so Adam and I are on little iPhone headset microphones, and Aaron is on a nice M-Audio USB producer mic. And we've got another M-Audio producer mic that's big, and I've also got a giant live soundboard thing and some other microphones. And we were going to use that and have a nice little kind of mix board, but it's all live gear and it's old, and so it sounds like crap, and there's a whole bunch of interference and everything else. And the reason we're not using both the big USB mics is because we don't have the right interfaces and blah, 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 blah. And it turns out that by throwing the iPhone mics in and doing the GarageBand jam session thing, it seems pretty easy, and I'm actually really surprised at how good the mics sound.
Yeah, not bad for a start.
Yeah, and it makes me think, too, though, that it's all getting cheaper and easier, and tech is getting smaller and cheaper and more portable and I think more affordable. And it's like when we were shooting, so we were shooting this pilot. I mean, y'all know this in the room, but other folks don't. We were shooting this pilot for this web series called The Weekly, which we'll get more into later, I guess. But I find myself putting like iPhones, old ones or my current one or whatever, like in people's shirt pockets or hiding inside couch pillows and stuff, along with the regular mic that we were using to capture sound, because those mics sound really good.
Yeah,
and they can hide like everywhere.
And with this new link up GarageBand feature where you can be having somebody's iPhone acting as their lavalier mic, and you're pulling it into the main sound mix for the whole show. And that's sort of what we're talking about, is how to use the technologies that are available to create the art we want to create and tell the stories we want to tell the stories of. I mean, the three of us all tend to be we come from a theater background, from a film and video, but graphic artists, musicians, what technical stuff is out there, what technology, what hardware, what software to use as the new medium to create art and tell the story and have it be about the story and not about the equipment.
Right, because it's getting, like I said, it's getting cheaper. I keep harping on it, but I feel like there's a certain amount of ego that comes into play with like gear, and I've got like it's like Aaron and I were at Fry's Electronics in Atlanta, and I was like looking at the Mac Pro, and I was like, oh, I'd love to have a Mac Pro, and then I was looking at the iMacs and the Mac Mini, and Aaron goes, well, yeah, but will this do what you need? And I go, well, actually, yeah, like it'd be just fine, and it's way less expensive. I mean, less upgradable, but I mean, these days, it's going to get the job done, and you're probably going to replace it in a couple of years anyway. Is GarageBand just as good to use as Pro Tools? Our little iPhone microphones that seem to be pretty high quality, just as good to use as, more expensive and more impressive looking gear. It's like we've got at work this camera that it's, back in the day it was quite a thing. It was like a Canon XL1 or whatever it was. But it shoots on tape, and it looks very impressive. Right, like at home, I have a VHS camera that looks very impressive.
Oh, that's the big one.
The big one,
like the Canon, and you just hold it over your shoulder. Rather
looks
than
extremely impressive.
The handheld ones that are available now.
Yeah, but now like we're shooting on a T3i, and it's tiny, and the footage is way better.
It looks like a still camera.
Yeah, and even the microphone on that is really good. Like we caught the audio independently, it's for storytelling purposes and stuff. But even the raw audio that came off of the tiny microphone on the Canon is really good. And I'm just like, I just think it's changing, and I just think that like we kind of get over ourselves in a certain way and trying to impress each other with what gear we have, where it's like, well, I cut this in Final Cut, well, I cut this in iMovie, and at the end of the day, it's about whose finished product looks better, or I cut this in Audacity or whatever, and what sounds better,
Adam and I nod a lot for a radio podcast.
Yeah.
But we'll get used to that at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for me not to like play with things that make noise.
Yeah.
Like my
keys. Got a fidgeter.
And I've got a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we know it's Jeff. If there's iced coffee shaking as somebody talks, it's probably...
Hello. I've lost interest.
Yeah.
I've been noticing I can hear myself swallow each time I've done it.
Well, that's...
So see how good these mics are?
I've kind of been focusing on that.
I think the one I'm wearing I've washed. So it's peeking out sometimes. I think it's probably got, I think I threw it in the wash one day by accident.
The detergent plugging.
So here I am talking about how good they are, and like I can hear it like peeking out a little bit. I've washed this microphone, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway.
So that's sort of jumping right into the middle of the conversation, which playwriting-wise is exactly what you want to do. Now let's do some of our exposition and who we are.
Sure, yeah.
And who we think
sounds like
we
you're
are.
going first, Aaron.
Okay, well, my name is Aaron. I am a performer in the Atlanta area. I do puppetry and theater for youth and whatever other theater comes my way. But I've also had the opportunity to be technical director for a small opera company where I have to really put together a show with a budget of good job and absolutely no assistance from a team. That's like, what can you put together? So I'm frequently trying to figure out how to get the best show, the best story out of exactly what I have available. And
I'm sorry, I'm trying not to laugh because I heard myself swallow.
See? Yeah. It's very distracting.
Pilots. Yeah. But I'm sort of the balance here, They haven't introduced themselves.
Who's the dark side?
Not light and dark, but we do sort of have an art and tech divide occasionally.
There is a definite continuum of, technology ease.
Yes.
And I know what end I am on.
Then I will be firmly on the other end.
And I think you guys will figure it out listening as we continue through the conversation. So, Adam?
Let's see here. I'm currently a teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade drama, but I've worked for children's theaters, both teaching and performing. And I guess I've had a lot of sort of different experiences of things that I've been responsible for, I guess, in my professional career. Tour managers and building sets and painting things and teaching classes and performing. And I would say my experience with technology overall is kind of, I find it extremely useful, but I'm very reliant on you guys Jeff and Aaron to explain a lot of things to me, or maybe throw things my way that you will realize and go, oh, well, that will be very useful to Adam. And I use it, and it's great. Like, for example, the Celtx program, the script writing thing. It's absolutely fantastic. Jeff and another friend of ours. And free. That's the other thing. There's so much free stuff
I was going to say,
there.
we will be talking a lot about open source and freeware and shareware because...
Well, it goes back to my thing of this Final Draft. You know, it's like, I mean, I used to get a lot of shit for using Celtx. It's like, well, I use Final Draft, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, and how much did you pay for it?
Yeah.
And, you know, I just need a thing that's going to do the formatting.
Yeah.
That's going to teach me the formatting.
Right. That's the thing is with Celtx is that there's so many helps and guides along the way, which is why I started using it with my classes this year. Because we do a script writing thing with my 5th graders, and oh my goodness, just in years past, what they would do with a Word document was just terrible. So now I can just teach them all the shortcuts and keystrokes, and it, you know, it's fixed some of the problems.
Of course, we're going to have to go through at the end of each podcast and figure out all the different products we mentioned, and I don't know if endorse is the right word, so that we can post it up on our...
throw links up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is we can go through and say, oh, here's a link to Celtx and Audacity, which we've already mentioned.
And I've pulled there's a bunch of stuff, I don't know that we'll talk about today or not, but that I was looking at that I've sent links to myself to think, oh yeah, we should post this. It's cool.
So we'll try and do visual aids afterwards as a sort of wrap-up, as we are trying to figure out the podcast. Yeah. It will hopefully improve for the listeners because we will maybe have
I think everyone knows the first episode's the rough one.
Yeah.
And then they get better. So we're doing all right so far.
I think so.
Will we have a theme song next time?
I think we'll have a theme song
this time.
We just haven't heard it yet.
Oh, okay.
By the way, guys, wasn't the theme song at the top of this episode just amazing?
It was incredible.
Thank you so much for acquiring satellites, I assume. Uh-oh. Something's going crazy.
I'm happy I've been upgraded from jingles to male voice.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We had a little... so what we've just learned is that while the GarageBand jam session is cool in its synchronicity fashion, it is not cool in that you only get 320 effing measures, and that will not work for podcasts. If there is another application out there, though, that's a voice recorder that will let you go for an hour or longer that someone knows about,
let us know.
Come
on
tell
our
us.
Message boards at artechnik.wordpress.com.
And it's weird spelling, ArTechnik.wordpress.com, because we're too cheap for a domain. Woo-hoo! Because we don't have the ego to think that you have to have
your very own
fancy domain. He says, probably knowing he'll buy one later.
So where were we?
Oh gosh.
We were, I think we were still in introductions and talking about Celtx. That's what...
Okay, and then we stopped to talk about how we would post a link to all the products that we thought were great. And I still like what we were just playing with, but it does have a limitation for a full-on podcast.
Yeah. I guess I'm left on the introduction list.
I guess so.
I am Jeff Holbrook, and I currently work at a theater. And I assume it will be, well, heck, it's not like it's some secret thing. I work at the Springer Opera House, which I guess is important to mention because from time to time I will bring up programs that we do there and stuff. And I guess it's best, I guess it's interest of like disclosure. It's like, if I say I like something at the Springer, by the way, I work there. But by the way, I do like it. So I don't want it to feel like something's a commercial, but I really do love what we do, and I think we do really innovative stuff, especially for almost 150-year-old theater. That's kind of cool. But there we go. Full disclosure, I work at the Springer. I am creative property director at Polar Studios, which is and Adam and Aaron are also part of the studio, and the studio that is producing this podcast. And what we do at Polar, our mission is to find the artists that are out there. Especially in smaller markets or who are just overlooked in larger markets, and get their work seen. We're not a talent agency. That's not our bag. But we do develop what I like to call creative properties. I know usually the term thrown around legally is intellectual properties, but I just feel like there's so many people out there that have the cool story that they want to tell, or a song they've written, or some form of creative expression that is just not going to get seen through traditional means. And we also, publish comics and stuff like that. And I've been an actor. I still am an actor. I do some film stuff out in Atlanta, and we produce our own stuff for the studio. And I was a stage actor for a while, and I did some tours, and loved every minute of it. So yeah. And now I'm going to cheat and look on my iPad to figure out what the heck I was going to talk about later, while Aaron talks about whatever Aaron's going to talk about.
All right, so one of the things we're planning to do with the podcast is to go out and find things that are of interest to us because of they hit that intersection of science and art and technology, and being an entrepreneur in all of that, trying to create not only art, which we are driven to do, but hopefully to create some amount of sustainable income so that we are available to create the art we want to make. You can't divide those two things. So what I have found for this week I want to talk about is not necessarily new. Y'all may have heard of it. Adam, Jeff, the people listening may have heard of it, potentially, but I had not. Therefore, it is new to me. Therefore, it is discussable. And this is Kevin Kelly's blog post from a couple of years ago called 1,000 True Fans. And it's about changing your perception of what's necessary for sustainable income from the sort of big market long tail model, which is you make a thing that sells a little bit forever, a big movie that then has other things that come off of it, and you're always selling DVDs from that one big massive hit, to this idea that you only need 1,000 true fans to be a sustainable artist business.
Go on.
And that's nice because that seems much more attainable.
Where I live.
Yeah. And so then that goes into the question of what is a true fan, as opposed to somebody who likes your page on Facebook and becomes an immediate fan. Right. A true fan, by his definition, is somebody who will buy just about everything you put out, no matter what, because they trust you and the work you do. And so just seeing that you have created a new thing, right, they go out and they're willing to buy it. They follow your...
I totally do that.
Yeah.
I'm one of those. I'm one of those weird consumers. I've told you this, Aaron. I'm one of those weird consumers that will buy multiple versions of a thing I already have because I love it.
That's exactly it. That is, so for those things, you count in their true fan category list. Okay. If there's a specific celebrity that you see in a movie trailer and you're like, wow, I know nothing about that movie, and in fact it looks kind of bad, but actor X so-and-so is in it, and I'm going to give it a try. And so you're willing to put down your movie ticket money because you're a true fan of performer. And so he's saying if each of your true fans spends $100 on you over the course of a year, because you're producing content and they're wanting to support the work you're doing, then you're suddenly making $100,000 because you have $100 from 1,000 people.
Right.
So as a solo artist, that is not only sustainable life income, but enough to continue to create and produce. He mentions that, since, say, Polar Studios is a multi-artist group, you may need more so that everybody has a living income. But you also have the vehicle to make more content.
Right.
And if they become a fan of the studio, say, if we have 1,000 true fans of Polar Studios,
right. And 1,000 people out of a world of how many?
Exactly.
Do we have right now? I mean,
7 billion.
Right, 7 billion.
And that's why Adam's here.
Yeah, that's why Adam's here. Thank you, Adam. But I think, I don't think you can afford to think of your audience as anything but global anymore. Unless you're a brick and mortar organization. If you produce a film or anything like that, you're playing to the world now.
Sure.
Period. The end.
Because most of the mediums have changed to things like digital distribution.
Right.
And
even some, even some theaters, like you look at what the Met's doing with like broadcasting opera digitally. I would freaking love a synchronous experience where, say, a show is playing like on Broadway or something. Curtain time is, let's say, 8 p.m. All right, I would love if I go, I buy my ticket and I go to, to the theater, to the movie theater here locally, and I sit down and I'm watching a live feed, and the show starts when it starts, but I'm at that event virtually because I can't have the time or the money or the whatever to go travel.
But connected to that specific
I'm there.
performance.
I'm getting that, like, and hopefully if there are other people, then you're still that are there, and you're not the only person that bought a ticket.
Sure.
You're still sort of getting that
group energy. That
and I know
experience.
that it's not the same. I know that it's not the same. It can't be the same.
But
if you play to the strengths of it, well, you can get close, or you can say, okay, it's not different. It's not the same. It's different. Here's how it's different, and here are the ways we can leverage that to make that a good experience. To make the satellite shows from beginning to end a thing where you say, so you've maybe got people there that are licensed representatives, agents of the show that are there, that are also locally employed, whatever. If this were a thing where theaters did this all the time. And it's like, hey, here's your program. We're glad you're here. Some fun fact about the show, or like a like a pre-show
feed
event.
Is what excites me, to see them.
Yeah, something that okay, you're not actually in the theater, but how do you still make that awesome?
It's just I understand, and like I've gone to see many of those sort of live broadcasts of ballets and operas and things that I know because of where I live. There's a very limited scope of what type of those shows that will be here in Columbus, and so I appreciate the fact that I can go watch them, but I don't know. I guess the question for me then becomes, are you hurting people at a local level and what they're doing and what they're trying to produce and what energy they're trying to create if there was a big shift and that became sort of a primary thing that, New York and maybe Atlanta and big cities are the producing venues, and then they just kind of pipe it and broadcast it out to the rest of the world, the rest of the country,
You're saying what then becomes the point of a local producing company to do a show that could be piped in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you do have a different experience as soon as you're breathing the same air as the performers and sharing that experience across that board. So having a group audience remotely does make a collective energy happen, but you don't necessarily have across. I, as an active theater goer already, would not find it a replacement. I would find it an augmentation. But yes, this statistic I heard recently, and I have done absolutely no research into its validity, but that 2% of the existing population considers themselves active theater participants. That's something that they think of as a thing to do, as a thing they want to do, which makes me sigh just to begin with. So yeah, it could be that we could lose some of those local performance venues. On the other hand, if what the casual theater goer needs is to see a big experience, to see the spectacle of what live theater can be, to make them an active theater goer, then perhaps the local theater companies are then able to do the smaller, more intimate experiences that you don't get on Broadway generally anyway. Going to a Broadway house, except for that shared space, is almost like going to a blockbuster movie these days. I mean, you are not intimately connected to the performers on stage. You are connected to them, but it's not the same as you get in, say, a local 100-seat house.
Well, it's like prosceniums. Prosceniums are hard for me. They're hard for me. I check out a little bit in a proscenium.
Because you've got the virtual wall there?
Yeah, it's like the difference in driving with the windows up and the windows down. You know what I mean? Like the glass, the separation. And so for me, going to a movie theater is not going to be much different. But nothing. I mean, nothing's ever going to replace a live event, right?
Sure.
But what I'm looking at is like books. Okay, so you look at books and ebooks. Nothing's going to replace a book when you want a book, a proper, like me, I'll buy a proper book and I'll buy the ebook because I want the portability, and I'm like, well, if the author gets my money twice, I'm very happy because they created a thing I like. Again, I'm that kind of consumer. But where the hell was I going with that? Live events and I'm also thinking that theaters in particular need new sources of revenue.
Sure.
And while if streaming becomes a source of revenue for them, I don't think you have to be the largest theater in the world to do it if you've got the right setup. It's dicey, but you know what I mean. Like I think there's a possibility that the tech can get a little more ubiquitous and get cheaper, and then I guess it's just a matter of who's got the best content or who's got the best sales team in getting them distributed.
And that's what I think many of our conversations are going to boil down to, is that the tech is there to assist the function of what the creation is, and that it is not in and of itself the point of the creation.
Right.
Though I have been sitting here thinking, with 3D digital quick technology becoming more effective, if we were going to broadcast live theater anyway, to do it in that sort of reverse, that the 3D where you sort of see the back move for, not like waving a skull in your face and going booga booga booga, but just seeing the depth of the stage and the shape of the costumes on the performers, so that even though you're in the remote space, you could enhance that connection by doing it 3D.
Yeah, 3D's got to get to where it's beyond a gimmick, where it's actually a storytelling device. I've seen a couple of films pull it off, but for the most part, it's been gimmicky to me. And I don't hate the tech. I think it makes me a little cross-eyed sometimes, but I'm not quite on the air. Aaron has this phrase. I'll let you say. You say it best. You're not interested in 3D.
Oh, that until 3D rivals the Data's portrait of Tasha Yar, I'm not particularly interested in it. And I assume because you're listening to this podcast that you have some geek background with us, but if not, Data the android was in a romantic relationship with Tasha Yar, and fully functional android. And he had this little crystalline base that when he touched a 3D hologram of Tasha Yar sort of standing and rocking side to side in place and smiling up at him. So that idea of the 3D hologram that's actually sitting there in presence is an interesting 3D technology to me. But at the same time, I've discovered it with this reemergence of 3D movies and everything with the digital D, and that the animated films, where it does add that dimension to the movie, I find more appealing than live actions, where I know that the human is three-dimensional because it is a human. But when you apply that 3D to the
especially like the stop motion.
Yes, when they re-released Nightmare Before Christmas the first time.
And Coraline, too, when I saw that with you, the 3D was a really nice enhancement to what was already,
a
dimensional
piece.
depth.
To see the figures, that that not only are these three-dimensional figures, but you see how far back they go. And that's what I think would apply to a theater presentation, is not this idea of Jim Carrey coming screaming out from the screen as Ebenezer Scrooge and hovering above your head for a moment, but instead seeing the back wall move away from you rather than the front wall move towards you. Unless you're doing a show with like a runway or something, and then it could be interesting to apply that, Rocky Horror revival.
even just scene changes. Things are flying, flats are flying up, flying out, and
you see the space that you would be seeing if you were sitting in the theater.
Yeah, it's not that one image is replaced by another. It's this thing is moving, and behind it there's that. Oh, look at that! That's great for like reveals of sets behind sets. Which
is that feeling you get when you see it live in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
Because most plays are produced in 3D. And we have had that technology way longer than the movies have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Theater got to 3D tech first. I think Springer did that one year for it's this year. Yeah, this year.
This is the tail end of the 3D campaign.
Their 3D, yeah, always in 3D. 3D for 150 years.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
and that was what we've been talking about with the podcast, is that we would pick a subject to talk about and it would lead to some interesting, fantastic discussion. But so this idea of 1,000 fans being the sustainable number, and he didn't quite pick that number out of the air, but he says it's obviously going to change depending on what you're creating and what you're producing and how much you need per year to live.
Right.
But that idea that it's a much smaller number than we probably think of, and in terms of Polar Studios, we have 6 or 7 true fans already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot
that are not on staff.
That are okay, 2 or 3 that are not. No. But people.
I'm sorry, I have to throw my head up in the air to laugh so I don't peek on the microphone. I feel like I'm like.
You do look like the evil villain over there. And so then there are the more casual fans in the circle outside there. But he says the difference is that the true fans are very loyal, but they need grooming, maintenance, taking care of. You provide things for your true fans that the casual fans may take advantage of.
Right.
But you thank them when they come out to an event, and you really acknowledge that they are participating in this collaborative art with you.
Right. Well, it takes work for them to be there and to show up and to takes work and care, and
when they're willing to drive from Columbus for an Atlanta film opening or vice versa, and come,
and that's very cool of them.
A couple hours to come see what you have created.
Yeah, if you're not nice about it and appreciative of it, then they won't come back. And
it becomes much more of a relationship than a strict business transaction.
Yeah.
But that shared load becomes a sustainable force.
And it sounds like, to me, then it's easy to nurture that relationship because you have so much more access now, as opposed to in the past where it was, sort of donors giving and you send out a mailer, 4 times a year or whatever it is.
No, but if you notice one of your true fans promoting you on Twitter, you can tweet back to them and be like, hey, thank you so much for the support. And you can make that direct personal connection.
Speaking of Twitter, I get a lot of, I feel like a lot of people don't use it well. I should be more specific, shouldn't I?
You should be very specific what you mean by
all right. So Twitter. I'm going to put these headphones on. I have 2 sets of headphones on. So, okay. Twitter. People treat it a lot of times as a shouting board. Here is what I'm doing. 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 Especially companies. Especially the larger companies, because I feel like they just don't quite get it. I love Twitter. Like, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Twitter user, like far more than Facebook. I really would kind of like to delete my Facebook. It's kind of a logistic in practicality, but if I could, I think I would. But I love Twitter because I love the conversations with people in places that I'm not at, doing things that I'm interested in, like other filmmakers, like in Canada, or there's this one lady, TJ Buffoonery is her handle, TJBUFFOONERY.
We'll make sure we have that proper spelling on our podcast wrap up.
Right. Okay, so she does cool theater workshops in a particular kind of style and tradition. And she's just someone that I got on Twitter, years ago, and got to know her, and we talk quite a bit, and I'm very interested in what she does, and one day I would like to go take one of her workshops in Canada, which it's interesting that I even think of that as an option now, right? So anyway, so I feel like that people fail to engage in conversation on Twitter, and that for me is where I think things fall apart. Like, Twitter is work, especially if you're doing like branding or something, and you actually care. You have to actually care about the people who have decided to care about you, and it's so great because ideas go back and forth, and they tell you what they like, what they don't, or they just tell you some weird thing that's going on in their life, but you have like that actual connection with someone that's interested in what you're doing, or just with other human beings that are doing things you never would think of. Like sometimes it's very inspirational. It's like, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, just like this. Or
well, it tends to feel like that the people who really use it as a promotional tool rather than as a communication tool, and they think of it in that term, they don't have a reciprocal feed. They're not actually reading Twitter.
Right.
They post to Twitter. Oh, we're doing
cool.
Some feedbacky.
There's a transformer in here.
And while even this podcast has feedback going on, you don't see a lot of feedback for...
I see what you did there. You made a joke about feedback.
And if I had finished it, I would have been fine, but I bailed out at the last minute.
Abort! Eject!
Oh no! That idea that I am...
If I do this, are you still heard?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We won't know till this whole thing is over and we have to decide if we have to re-record everything.
Yeah, we're not re-recording anything.
That's good. We'll have a whole new conversation.
I'm sorry, I'm derailing you. I'm sorry.
Just that sense that it is a two-way form of communication, but so many people approach it as, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm doing. And not, you're doing that thing. Yeah. And here's my... How
cool are you for doing that thing? Yeah.
And not that it should be, this giant back-patting society across the globe. But
what do you call it? Circle jerk?
That's what you call it, yes. But
what are we rating this podcast?
Well,
how much can I say? Can I be that guy on the show?
I think that was a done conclusion.
Oh, okay.
That was spent money.
Oh, okay.
You represented the dark side anyway.
Oh, right. I just asked the question, and apparently have answered it. I'm not the one with the nefarious mustache. He has a handlebar mustache.
Which sounds very funny on the radio. So what's the solution then? How do we encourage the people who use Twitter inappropriately if they're not listening to what else is going on?
I think that's the great thing about Twitter. It's almost a self-correcting thing. Mm-hmm. People quit following them. People ignore them. People don't engage them. And then I guess the real problem is the gap in education. So if they sit there and say, I don't understand why no one's following me, or why no one's... Are there children screaming? Can you hear them? We've decided to record this podcast on a day where there are children, not any of ours that we're aware of.
Playing in the yard next door.
Playing in the yard next door, and there's an air show happening. Thankfully, I think the air show may have stopped.
Yeah, it seems... I haven't heard any of that, but yes, I did hear very quietly in the background a child screaming, which I felt legally it might be beneficial to just acknowledge it from the get-go and say we have nothing to do with the child screaming in the background.
Well, if something awful is happening to that kid, we're liable because now we know and we didn't do anything.
Oh, I'll go check.
Someone go look out the window.
They have a trampoline.
He's really doing it.
So,
He's really doing it. He's going all the way to the window. How are we, Aaron?
Yep. Thanks for stomping nice and loud so the mic could pick it up.
Yeah, did it?
They won't know I'm walking unless I stop.
Oh, I see. Well, they won't.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
They're playing on the trampoline. They're fine.
Back on track. Where were we?
Twitter.
Who's got it? Anyway, so I'm gonna get off my Twitter soapbox because I'm sure I'll get back on it plenty of times. But anyway, I think that is a problem with social media in general. Mm-hmm. Is that it has to be a conversation. It can't be a shouting board. Anyway, end of speech.
Oh well, I think because it's all of that is still pretty new, like within the last decade,
right?
And so I think there's a lot of sort of mindset shifts that have to happen.
Right.
People that will grow up where it's a natural thing around.
But if you're a 12-year-old, it's been around for half your life.
Yeah.
Right?
And it is so much more communication for them about, they're all at different schools, and so they'll tweet and post and let everybody know what they're doing at their school, and they're having conversations and sort of planning out what they're doing. But I think you're right. I think it'll be self-correcting over time. It'll become less a shouting board and more of a
and you look at
dialogue.
Television and you look at film and radio when it first came out, and it was sort of a brute force approach, because as we create, as technologies appear, it takes us a while to learn the technology itself, much less how to use it artfully, how to use it truly in the craft sense rather than as the big sledgehammer.
Mm-hmm.
We have this thing, let's use it, and now how do we refine that use? How do we tell the better story because we have it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we illustrate a stage show better with moving lights than just having them moving all the time because we can?
Right.
And that's what, when you first get a moving light, your first show with it tends to be sort of flashy and movie and look at all the things, and then you're
like with 3D. Look at this thing in the air.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, are kids starting to jump ship on Facebook? Are you hearing that? I keep hearing that kids are starting to migrate away. I think I sound old now. Maybe Tumblr. I don't know. Maybe the Tumblr.
I would say, with my experience with the 5th and 6th graders, I have many of them have Facebook pages,
right?
Because they frequently ask me if I'm on it, or or I hear them talking about trying to meet up and friend different people. And
right.
I don't know if it's any more or less than it was a couple of years ago, but I will say that they are still using it.
Mm-hmm. And with college students, at least, what we are fighting is they think of it as a totally encapsulated form of medium.
Mm-hmm.
They expect us to send them their show notices and class reports and things through Facebook. And we're like,
hate that.
You're dealing with, we still think of email as the professional communication system and Facebook as the social communication system. And for them, it's social and business is the same thing. Again, in our old man speak here. But that seems to be the case with the college students I deal with, is that idea that if you would like to look professional, your email account should be your name at something.com and not hot and juicy at Yahoo.
Don't give out my handle.
Sorry. Don't email him at hot and juicy because you won't like the reply. But
1,000 of you will. And I'll
that's
invest in those 1,000.
That's the title of the show, 9 people's favorite thing.
That's right.
But yeah, that idea that there is still a division between professional internet communication and social internet communication.
Yeah. I'm big on separation of church and state that way.
Yeah.
I really am. Like I like my email is my professional communication stuff, and Facebook, I kind of just want to kill it anyway, but Facebook is personal, interactive, and like hanging around the water cooler to talk. Because email, and it's an organization thing for me. I like to be able to turn stuff off.
Well, you have, if I may say,
sure,
emails for each of your jobs, not just this is my professional existence. You have this is this part of my business, and this is this part of my business, and so that you have it sort itself just by what email it comes in on.
Right.
And that's a very useful thing for you to keep track of everything.
It keeps me sane. I have to be able to turn work off, or else I can't sleep. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, because you're like,
or I'm like checking my email on my phone or something, and it's like I used to have a no phones at dinner kind of self-imposed rule. Like nope, I'm gonna sit and talk to you and find out about your day.
The actual people who have chosen to be in the room.
Right. Yeah. You called me out hardcore one day on that. I was hanging out with Aaron and we were in the car and I was laughing at something. I was reading some emails or texts or something like that on my phone, and Aaron said, "Boy, all those people who aren't here sure are fun." And I was like, "Ooh,
well,
I'm a jerk."
I got burned when I had an out of town friend in. And they had stepped away for a moment, so my, addictive tendencies, I had pulled out my sidekick at the time and checked my email so that by the time they came back to the table, I was doing a thing. And they called me out. They were, I haven't seen you in 4 months, and the 2 hours we had together, you had to check your email. And since then, it's been, that was what I needed. I needed somebody to just point it out straight out. You just did this to me. The person who chose to actually be in the same room with you. And not that I think remote friends, that they have chosen not to be, because most of my best friends right now in a global world, live in cities that are different than I do.
Right.
And our primary communication is text and email and Facebook. And I don't think that makes them lesser because they haven't chosen to be in the same room as me. They cannot be in the same room as me. But at the same time, when I am with somebody, I try very hard to put those addictive tech things down and focus on what's actually going on right in front of me.
On the opposite end of that, I love Google Hangout more than FaceTime. I love Google Hangout because I can do it over 3G. Anyway, we're awful tech heavy. We should talk about art.
And so
Handlebar.
Jeff and I look across the room at
I'll bring the art. All right.
An article that I found, this was actually from one, came out last year sometime. It was right around when Charlie Sheen was having his huge meltdown. And apparently everyone was looking to Roseanne for sort of a comment on kind of, losing your cool in the midst of trying to produce or participate in this television show. And it was just this...
what would she know about that?
She had a show.
Oh, right.
She had a show.
Well, thanks.
When the lottery season happened.
Oh, yeah, I don't...
we don't talk
about that last season, yeah.
Remember Roseanne, kids?
But the 8 seasons preceding it were fantastic.
That's true. I really did like her show.
But yeah, but it was sort of her reaction, and she went into great detail about her personal experience of when she first got her show, and how it was a fight to kind of remain true to this character and this routine that she had sort of built for 8 years in comedy clubs, and how that very first season, it was a fight between her and this male producer that had been assigned by ABC to sort of, guide the show and massage the show, and he just didn't get it. And so she had to fight long and hard, and eventually she won. Because there's this great little thing she talks about in the article where she says she knew her show was going to be number one. Like, she just knew, for whatever reason. And when she was going through all of her troubles with this producer, she made a list, she said, of every single person on the show. Writer, costumer, tech, every person, from producers down, and put a check mark by everyone she was going to fire once she had complete creative control of the show, once it was number one. And by God, she did it. Once it hit number one, it was headed that way halfway through the first season, she eventually got her way after a couple of blow-ups and incidents with this particular producer, and got him off the show, and brought in people that she respected and created. And, like a lot of people, like Joss Whedon and Judge Apatow, and people got their sort of first crack at things on her show because she liked their particular voice or writing style or whatever, and brought them in.
Together Whedon and Roseanne.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just interesting. And she was, she confesses that she suffers from bipolar disorder. And so, dealing with that in the midst of dealing with what you have to be famous, or what you have to do to gain success on a national stage. And again, this is 20 years ago. Before now, we were talking about how now you sort of have a global audience at your disposal. But she said, maybe that's what this talking point then becomes is, she was saying how she found out how little control the actual writers and stars and producers have. It ultimately comes down to the admin and the people that are paying the money, in between those act breaks, so that you can put on your show. Mm-hmm. And what she felt, she had to stay true to who she was. She had this great quote from The Art of War, which she said she was reading very heavily in her first season. And what was the quote? It was, "He who cares the most wins."
And that's really the absolute base of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're creating the content, if you're creating the piece, the art, the story, the film, the podcast, and it's driven, and you're not ever letting it be diluted, then you're the one, whether you've got studio setup, or 3 iPhones chained together, or
awkwardly.
Yeah.
wax cylinders.
Oh, that's a medium we need to get into.
Wax cylinders. That's where the future lies. Except for global warming, they're gonna get very soft in the coming market.
Oh.
I'm very soft. I need to work out more.
Perhaps we will have an episode about what technological advances in workout.
I bring my nano to the gym.
I'm glad you qualified it with workout too, because all I saw was you look down and said I'm very soft. So it's like that's a huge confession to make on this potentially global podcast.
Excellent. No, but that's really what it boils down to. Is whatever technology you have, it's about what you're creating with it, and not what the technology is.
All right, let me argue for the other side then. Let me argue for sometimes someone can have complete creative control over something, and it is a piece of crap.
Oh yes.
And so sometimes, or they don't get objective about it. I find this a lot in recording artists. Like they start out, and if you've got the right producer, there's a good mix of the artist and how they were focused. That when maybe they get to a point later in their career where they can kind of do whatever they want, they get so meta and so experimenty and so I'm right, that a lot of times either the work is very good or the work is excellent and is ahead of its time. Sometimes people think they're ahead of their time when they're just bad, and I mean, it's hard for us to know, but you know what I mean. So as long as you can stay objective about your work, or you have someone say, "Hey, is this?" I feel like you've got to be able to bounce ideas off of someone, check in, or something.
I agree that just because you are doing the thing you want to do doesn't necessarily make it good. My point is that whether you are releasing on a piece of film, on a reel that you project, or going to a webisode format and making a web series, if the story is good, then the story is good no matter the medium, but the medium can benefit or hurt you in other ways in distribution, but that the core of it is still that you are telling a successful story, not that you are following your own personal vision to the exclusion of all others, but that your personal vision is a good one.
Right. Roseanne's lottery season.
Yeah.
What happened? She said she was tired of the show by then, or
I think exactly what you're saying right now happened. She lost her objectivity. And I think, as she describes in the article, she kind of got to the breaking point of having to find that balance of, what do I want this character to be and stay true to what I've established and created, and what do I need to do for it to still be successful?
How do I do a new story arc?
Right.
We've lost our job 10 times.
Yeah.
We've gotten pregnant twice, and we tell every story we think we can out of the given circumstances.
And so I think she just, I think she doesn't really explain her reasons, but I think she just hit the breaking point and said, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's where, I think she maybe lost the objectivity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Good prompt, Adam. You got another?
Oh, I've got lots. Yeah.
I like Aaron's as well.
No, thanks. That's a nice pity bone there.
Yeah, I'll do what I can.
I would say, but again, going back to, it comes down to story. I mean, it really does. For me, if there's no story, it's just boring.
And again, that's in a narrative medium, but we mean story in the sense that, a painting tells a story. It evokes something.
Yeah.
Music evokes something, and that's what we're using the sort of collective word story for.
Okay.
I'm hearing from you guys.
Okay. That is what I will be using it for now.
All right. Well, no, because we all come from a very narrative set of mediums. Yeah. We're either film or theater or short story. We all come from a very narrative background. The three of us. Dance. Now, some of our future guests are going to come from other.
I just sent from
There you go. So
that's true. I will ascend into Carnies.
My
That
progeny...
came out far worse than I really wanted it to. Apparently, Carnies retire somewhere around, I think, Sarasota or something.
Yeah.
I have been told.
There's a huge community in Florida. Don't you remember the episode of, there was an X-Files episode where they went to basically like a freak show retirement trailer park in Florida, and it was based on this very real place. And in fact, a couple of the folks that were featured in it were actually retired carnival folk.
So if we go down there and find a bearded lady using an Android phone, is that enough intersection of art and tech to do a podcast about?
Yes, I think so. Mostly because that would be...
to figure out how to write off a trip to Florida.
Yeah.
Shut up.
I've also recently heard that there is a village of psychics, that they all do different divination techniques, but they're just this one big collective community.
It's hard to sneak up on them, though. They know you're coming.
Yeah. One woman pours pancakes, and the darker parts of the pancakes do sort of like a Rorschach thing, and she sees what pictures are on your pancake and uses that to divine your future.
Go on.
That's really all.
I'm sure.
I've just heard this story recently.
What kind of batter is it? I mean, like,
It's
is
just
Bisquick
like
better
bread.
than? What's
Just
the
a-
best?
I imagine she
What's the
uses
best
flour
batter for
and makes her
prophecy?
own. I don't think
Oh.
she does a mix. I mean,
You think
she is a
has like
craftsperson.
a mill and like grind? I mean, like how pure does it have to be to? Because surely she discovered that by accident.
That she has the ability to read pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was apparently.
Don't eat that, little Timmy. I've got to read it first.
And she'll take pictures of the really interesting ones. So the guy who told me this story had like the first they sat down and she like flipped through her like Hall of Fame photo album of significant pancake readings.
This is the JFK pancake. It's got a hole in it. Imagine if it was like a crepe. You get it like a message in Braille.
Yeah.
Those are only the French fortune tellers.
So there's something about going to Florida to meet your group collective.
Oh, boy. Well, that was a fun tangent.
All right, so we got time for one more prompt.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I don't know what do I have? Oh, I found weird stuff like new space flight stuff. I don't know. I felt pretty talky on this one. I think the PS Vita sounds kind of interesting.
I don't know anything about it.
Oh, well, I think it's interesting because it's the new PlayStation portable kind of device, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have one. I don't have a PlayStation portable. In fact, I've got like an old PS1 that I bought like recently so that I could play the old Final Fantasy games because I never played them.
I love that you're like this antique collector of
technologies
that, but I mean that were like came out 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Or yeah. I mean, and they are antiquated.
Digital antiques have a different time scale than, say, furniture antiques.
Sure.
Or
yeah.
architectural antiques.
Damn it, I don't have to play those games. So
He's got,
I'm looking at the Game Boy graveyard on the mantle.
Yeah. It's a classic gray brick, the Advance, the folding one.
It looks like a retro NES. Thank you very much.
The DS, before it was a DS Lite.
Yeah.
It's a big old honking monster.
I like old tech, especially if old tech can run new software. It makes me happy.
If you can jerry rig the most recent video board into an Apple II, Jeff freaks out.
I'm pretty happy then.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the PS Vita is neat for one reason only. Forget the game, forget the smartphone-like capabilities, although it's not a phone. Forget the applications. Forget all that stuff. The back, and I've not used one, but I've read this. The back is a touchpad. It's on a screen, but it's like, you're holding, like if I'm holding the device, this responds, and I can this.
What
thing,
he's doing is touching a phone on the back of it.
Right, I'm running my fingers across it. So I drag my fingers across this back surface here. That's not a screen, and it responds. And can be part of the control scheme, which is something that... And the idea
being it's a sort of intuitive interface where your fingers are going to want to do that anyway.
Yeah, well, because I've been one since I was a kid, like, and I was playing on devices and holding like a Game Boy or something like that.
Right.
I'm like, especially if it's an interesting texture on the back, you wish that there were buttons there or something that
I
would
always
respond.
used to, when Mario wasn't jumping high enough, I would lift the controller with both hands and then bump the table with the microphones on it. But so I would try and lift him higher with the jump.
Right, everyone does that, and then the Wii comes out, and
it actually kind of helps.
Yeah, and you can kind of a little bit with the Wii controller help him out. Kind of. It's not exactly like we would expect it to be, but
you'd think the people who made the Wii surely grew up playing Mario with the 2-button controller, and surely they twitched and tried to lift it themselves.
I found a thing called, and we'll post a link to it, called ScanOps. And
ScanOps?
It is this. It's a series of photographs that are accidental images from Google Books employees. So when people are scanning books into Google to become Google Books, they have, and I'll put pictures up on the site, but they have like the employees accidentally get caught in the camera, like their hands will get caught, or like the images will be like distorted.
Like the book moves across the page.
Exactly. As the book moves across the page,
or the scanner bed, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's
and so they come out weirdly artistic. Those totally accidental.
Yeah, and I think that's very cool. The guy's name is, I think, Andrew Norman Wilson. What I'm reading, I believe that's who did it. If it's not, I'll correct it later. But yeah, I would like to send a link to that up on the site because it's just cool. Like, I love that whole idea of unintentional
art.
Because you ever throw stuff in a scanner and you start to scan it, and then you're like, oh, what the hell? You move the page around just to see how far the little laser will go and how far the sensor will. I played with scanners just me, huh? You should have seen what I did to dot matrix printers.
Whoa!
And finally, adventure games, point and click adventure games being on the rise again make me happy.
Yes, the Telltale, or Tim Schafer.
Yeah, you talk about him.
He just got it. He kicked off. He did Day of the Tentacle and all sorts of brilliant games. Psychonauts being a recent one. And he kicked off a Kickstarter thing saying, I still want to make point and click adventures, and he made his first $1 million in like the first weekend, and so he's like, however much you guys give me, that's how big a game I will make. So people are pre-ordering this game just because they're true fans.
Right.
Because they know that he is going to create content worth consuming. And
consume content.
So they jumped in. I mean, as soon as he made this announcement, and I for one am looking forward to it. What is Tick Isle?
TikTok Isle. There's I don't know much about it, but Jason Boyer. It's another point and click adventure game, and he made one called Cat Poke as well, and I've not played that. But anyway, it's just interesting to me, like, because the graphics are that old, 16-bit really kind of looking, pixel art. I think pixel art's really cool. And what I love about it is it's a style choice. Like, he's doing the game in a particular, he's being true to essentially the genre. Like, if you're making a film noir piece, there's a certain thing you do. If you're making a point and click adventure game, you have lots of options, sure, but this is one where you go, oh yeah, it's just like the thing, but he could do fancier graphics, but instead he goes for this cool artistic choice, which I think is great.
There you go.
Makes me happy.
So perhaps we will follow TikTok Isle and
yeah,
see what happens with it, because it's at the demo stage. Right?
And Jurassic Park's coming out in 3D next year.
Oh yeah?
Yep. Oh, look at that! He's disappointed.
I remember going to that. I remember going on the night it opened. I think I was in 7th grade or 8th grade. It was middle school, junior high, and every one of my friends loved that movie, and I hated it. Yeah. I thought the dinosaurs were cool, but just beyond that, I hated it.
Rather see a science documentary about cool dinosaurs.
I would, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Like, you remember the ones that Disney, I don't know if Disney did them, but they were on the Disney Channel with Gary Owens and then that redheaded guy. I don't know his name, but he was
Gary Owens and the
redheaded guy. He hosted like a lot of Disney sort of Imagineering sort of science explanation.
There's a vague. I can't come up with a name either, but it doesn't seem...
But Gary Owens and the redheaded guy.
the name of my next album.
Buck Owens, and that's very different. Anyway. Well, I think that probably wraps us up.
Guessing when we remove the microphone bump and everything and patch the two pieces together, we're going to be right about...
Don't give away all our tech secrets. No one wants to know how the sausage is made.
The whole podcast is about how the...
Broadcast?
The whole podcast.
I like it. It's an exploratory... Welcome to the broadcast. Ow, ow, ow.
The whole podcast is about how the sausage...
It's a podcast now.
All right. Well, when we do the mysterious thing to the thing that didn't happen in the middle of this recording process...
Right, you saw nothing.
I think we'll be at about the right time for a nice round pilot.
Yeah, and so...
We'll be back soon.
Thank you for... I was going to say enduring this, but I should say thank you for listening. And
if you liked it, spread the word. Help us find some fans and true
if you don't,
fans.
tell everyone how much you hate it. And
cause a
scandal. You could cause a sensation in your neighborhood.
Try and get us banned at your local area, please.
That's right.
Okay. I'll talk a lot more as this goes on.
Sure.
As I'm less intimidated being surrounded by all these microphones and computers.
The ghosts in the machine.
Everyone's watching you. The magic boxes, they take your soul.
Oh, God. All right, so now we're going to hear Acquiring Satellites' really great outro theme.
Yeah? All right. Oh, okay. Yep, there we go. Now I'll have to compose that.
You're welcome.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.